I'm Rob Licuria, senior editor at Gold Derby, here with Zoe Saldana, producer and star of the Netflix limited series From Scratch. First of all, Zoe, listen, I'm sure you hear this all the time, but From Scratch, I laughed, I cried, I loved, I cried again. I was with my wife, we cried together. Do you hear that often? And what does it mean to you when you get that kind of feedback?
First of all, thank you so much for having me on the show. I heard it so much. The feedback on From Scratch was just I mean, out of this world, and it happened in bulks, and it happened so quickly, and it was just so positive, overall positive. And so it felt like a really magical reception, I have to say.
Yeah, I feel like I've bonded with other people over this show because we've all discovered it. We all went into it for different reasons, and we all came out of it thinking, "What a story!" And I can't believe that it's based on real life. And I then was thinking that you have been quite candid about your own experience with grief and loss. Can you talk me through how that impacted or informed your ability to tap into that really profound emotion that we've all experienced in one way or another, but you're able to tap into it and then give it to us on the screen?
Well, From Scratch, when I met with Reese, and she sent me the book in the early, and it wasn't even released out, but she said, "I just have a feeling about this book. I know it's going to be really well received. It's based on a true story. These sisters are magical, and Tembi's journey and how she wrote this memoir is just stunning." And what drew me to the book was I was able to channel my inner child and re-experience that sensation of loss through my 9-year-old self when I lost my father. And I just didn't remember the last time I saw a story through the eyes of a child as well, losing their superhero and having to sort of reconcile with this. And then on the other side, those, I do remember that as a child, those were pretty difficult times. And my mom, who was with us after losing my dad, my mom just was unable to pick up her pieces for a couple of years because she was dealing with her a chunk of loss, of losing the love of her life, her soulmate, her partner, her husband, her lover. And but when I was 9, I just didn't understand. All of a sudden, I remember I lost 2 parents, at the same time, for an undetermined amount of time. And reading Tembi's From Scratch, I was able to just feel my mother. Wow. And have so much respect for her journey, knowing that my mom, after losing my dad, she still had to get up and put on a smile and make breakfast for these 3 little girls that aren't even teenagers yet. So it's like she can't rationalize with us when we're having those meltdowns, like, "I want daddy, I want daddy, I want daddy," and we're inconsolable. And she's probably right about to have her own breakdown. And those were difficult times. And From Scratch was therapeutic for my sisters and I. And I finished the book in a bath. I remember my husband was drawing me these baths because I would start crying. I would wake up and read the book and I wouldn't let it go. And he would draw me these baths in a span of 3 days. I read it for 3 days. And I would just like lay in the bath and finish and read the book and just sob. And but after closing that final page, there was this sense that it's okay to live with this pain. You don't have to put it away. You don't have to ignore it. You just have to manage it and live with it. And then I thought, this is important. We have to send this message out there, for all these caretakers out there that are going through this on a daily basis, for all these children that are burying a loved one and are unable to understand, like, this is their story. And the other flip side was, as a woman of color, I couldn't remember the last time that we saw a story where a woman had her eat, pray, love, like on a global scale, and I thought, in a sense of sort of like social justice, like this is important. And my sisters and I are always about sort of amplifying stories where women of color are living all throughout all the different themes of life, you know?
Wow, I totally agree. You know, and also when you're part of a show like this, and even when you're watching it, you obviously take it in through your own lens. I mean, that's just a subjective way that you consume art and love it. For me, as a man of Sicilian descent with kids, I was like, okay, I just tapped into Eugenio's role so profoundly for some reason, and it made me understand what it might be like to just eventually pass away and leave your children and your wife alone. And I found it very profound from that angle. I'm just wondering then, when do you hear that from people, that everyone's taking it from their own perspective? And to me, that's probably slightly unexpected, perhaps.
What was your question?
So,
Just so I
do you find that you're hearing from people that they've watched the show and they've taken their own lessons, they've learned about loss and grief in their own way? And were you
yeah,
expecting that?
absolutely. This was also a love story, you know, that ended prematurely.
Yeah,
And it's funny that that's what I thought going into this. And I was so heartbroken for Tembi and for Sato, her late husband, and her family. But Tembi put it in such a beautiful way. It's like, no, we transcended. Our love still lives on. It's transcended. And I thought, oh, it's just beautiful. I needed this love story. I needed to feel this passion. I needed to see these two human beings from different parts of the world come together. And besides all the adversities that they had to deal with, they still chose each other, and they still chose love. And love at the end, even though he moved on, love still won for
yeah,
them. And I think that was the biggest takeaway. But I totally agree with you. This is the kind of story that is relatable on so many levels for women, men, and children as well.
yeah. I love Eugenio Mastrandrea in this. I thought he was phenomenal. Had never heard of him. Now I'm so glad I have. He's but he was very authentic in portraying Sicilian man in his prime, who's then cut down, unfortunately, and then passes away. What did you most about? And when I spoke to him, by the way, he was just so effusive in his praise about you and about the cast and crew. What's the reverse? What did you most value about working with him?
What I most value about working with Eugenio is that we very early on established a brother-sister bond.
Yeah.
Out of sheer fear and necessity, but maybe also like natural chemistry. We knew that we were going to embark on a very challenging journey of having to be super vulnerable and incarnate these roles where the people who this was based on were present with us. So there was just this added pressure that even though it was never put upon us, we still gave it to ourselves. And I don't think that I would have been able to have dived into Amy if it wasn't for the fact that I trusted Eugenio very early on profusely. And I know that he did as well. And that meant that there were days in which, we would share with each other that we were petrified, that we were scared, or that sometimes I just don't know what to do here. Like, when you're dealing with grief and it's an emotion that maybe you've experienced in your life, your survival instinct kicks in and you shut down. And even as an actor, it doesn't matter how much Meisner technique you can do, like trauma works that fucking
Yeah. Oh,
like just consistent, like it literally, like you shut down, you can't access any of your, feelings or anything like that. But if you have someone that you trust, that you look into their eyes and they kind of go, I got you. These are your baby steps. This is your A, your B, and your C. And that's what we would do on certain days. And we got through it. And we felt really proud of the work that we did, primarily because Tembi and her family and Attica were there, and we wanted them to feel seen and supported. We were holding that space with them, but also like as artists, we were able, like, that doesn't happen all the time, where you feel such great trust and chemistry with your co-star that you can say anything, you can do anything, and you're going to be okay, and they get the best out of you and vice versa. And I feel like Eugenio and I really like established that very early on, which is like, thank God we did that. And then that kind of trickled down to the rest of the cast, because you had the Sicilian, the Italian cast, and then you had the American cast, and this beautiful relationship happened between all of us, and it was just really magical.
Oh no, man. I think I'm gonna have to watch it again, because it's been a little while, and that the Sicilian stuff just, so beautiful. And also, like, I know this set, you've characterized it as being a fragile set, and that's so totally understandable. You are coming into a story that is so profoundly intimate for Tembi and Attica, and then putting your own spin on it. Is that actually more challenging? Like, is it actually quite challenging? It sounds like something where you're tiptoeing, constantly making sure that everyone is okay, you're number one on the call sheet. Or were you able to just let that go and just really dive in?
No. I was hoping to have that experience, but deep down, I knew it was going to be an uphill, experience. And I was ready. I was all for it. And it ended up being much harder than I was expecting. But we showed up every day for Tembi and for Attica. And there were days in which, we were all being challenged, because as a creative artist, you protect that freedom to be artistically kind of nuanced so much. You protect it. But then when you're a part of a story that is based on a true story, and you have the actual characters present, there's just a great deal of, like, you have to follow it by the book. And so we did dance that a lot, but it was a gracious dance. It was amicable. It was a balanced compromise. And at the end of the day, it's like Tembi says, love won, because everybody that showed up, and not just the cast, talking about the crew, the LA crew, the Italian crew, we showed up every day and we gave 120%. It didn't matter if it was 16-hour days or 10-hour days, we were in it, because we had all been moved by Tembi's story, but also we all had our personal share of grief, and we were there for ourselves as well. And Tembi gave us that space. And because that's the thing about death and grief, is that it's not an exclusive, walk in life. It is inclusive of everyone and of everything. And so we welcomed every experience relating to grief.
Another thing I loved about the show that I wasn't expecting was the relationship between Amy and Zora. It makes so much sense given Tembi and Attica. But Danielle Deadweiler, by the way, I think I interviewed her a year and a half ago and thought, wow, you are going to be a superstar. And look what's happened. She's incredible in this. And I was just thinking, like, could you and her maybe just go off and do a play or another show together? Because I think you've got something that is very hard to quantify. What do you think about working with her?
I fell in love with Danielle. I see her art. I see her intensity. I see her beauty. I too was just like you. The moment I locked eyes with her, I'm like, you are a megastar. And she's a multidisciplinary artist. So her form of expression comes in many, many forms. And I'm a sucker for that. For the person that can dance and sing and write and create visual art, conceptual art, poetry. I'm just like, how do you do this? And Danielle has it all. So we are, the world is her oyster right now. And yes, I did tell her many, many times. And I still think of it often. I would love to find a way to work with her at some capacity capacity, at whether we're both performing or I'm directing or producing or she's producing or directing. I just had such a wonderful experience working with her. But the same thing applies to Eugenio, to Paride, to Lulu, to Roberta, Hilda, Judy, Keith. I mean, need I say more? It was a great stellar cast.
Yeah, I want to start a Paride Benesse fan club because I just love him. I want to put him in the corner and just put a bow on him and just like, you're the best thing of it. But he should be nominated for an Emmy for that performance. It's so beautiful. So I totally agree. And it's interesting that a lot of people probably don't know that you have an Italian connection personally, obviously, and you're able to kind of show off. You're very, very good Italian and Sicilian, by the way. My parents were very impressed. Want to put that
Tell
out.
them, grazie mille, molto gentile.
I mean, to have, my parents are in their 70s. They don't watch a lot of stuff like this. You know, they watch football and they watch like whatever Italian shows, and they were totally invested in this. And they just kept saying, who are these people? Are they all from Sicily? I'm like, no, that's Zoe Saldana. She's not Italian. So that's pretty good.
No, there was, I think that's why Reese felt compelled to send me the book. We were having dinner with Reese and her husband, my husband and I, and some mutual friends. And the very next day, she was like, hey, I hope you don't think this is weird, but I want to send you a book because just seeing you and your husband together, I just couldn't help but think of you for this role, and I want you to produce it with us. And yes, there was a connection. I was very, up until that point, very unfamiliar with the Sicilian culture because my husband is really from out of the, and it does feel like it's almost like two separate, like cultures within a country. And that's what's so beautiful about Italy, is that everybody regionally, like they just own their identity in such a way for thousands of years. It's unwavering, and the Sicilian culture, everybody from Italy really admires the Sicilian culture because there's nothing more precious than Sicilians and their culture. So so it was new for me when it came to that. Shooting in Italy, in Florence, it really felt like going home. It has become a second home for us. But when it came to Italian, I spoke it, like here and there up until from scratch. Having to really learn it and speak it fluently, on the show repurposed me, and it gave just the language a brand new meaning. So I am, these past 2 years, I'm speaking much better Italian than I ever had in the first 8 years of my marriage. And it's thanks to from scratch, I really have to say.
So you get to bring that along for the ride as well. Like you just win, tick, tick, tick. Final question. So I have always, like, you've been in some of the biggest movies of all time, and a lot of people know you from your roles as Uhura and Atiri and Gamora. I think this role is the best work you've ever done, and I'm wondering then, what's next for you? I know you're in the Taylor Sheridan universe now, which is amazing because every show he does is gold. Are you looking forward to people's reaction to Lioness? Because that looks really good. I'm very excited about it.
I am. I hope. I hope because my heart was definitely, it felt like my heart was in the right place when I called Taylor back. And I was ready to accept that challenge. I feel that I have been blessed. I've been a part of amazing films that have catered to audiences on a global scale, and enough that they've become, franchises. And I'm grateful for those opportunities. But after a while, it did become a little taxing on just like, the artistic growth that I was unable to sort of do. But it all happened the way that it needed to happen, because while all these sequels were happening, I was also starting my family. Yeah. So I really needed to make both things work and keep them, like alive and floating. Now that my kids are a little older, they're 8 and 6. And I'm married to a very supportive partner who makes every sacrifice and just cheers for my career more than I can cheer for myself sometimes. And if that weren't the case, I would not have taken on Lioness or From Scratch. I would be home and doing whatever it is that I need to do to keep my family good. But Lioness came forward. Taylor approached me during 2020. I was too scared. I had no trust in myself that I can be a part of this. From Scratch gave me this belief that I'm like, if I live through From Scratch, and that was a grueling shoot for 5.5 months, then I'm like, maybe I can do this when it won't be as grueling. It but I learned to just be prepared to be very disciplined and to still arrive to work with an open mind and a big heart and to just do the best that I can. And the best that I can is 120%, because I'm, I don't like to give any less. And I had a blast, and I really hope that kind of translates when audiences see it.
Where everything Taylor does is so damn good.
I mean, as I mentioned, it's not like I'm, by myself, like carrying
No,
this.
I know. Yeah,
with Nicole
there are
Kidman,
other people, but whatever.
and a wonderful cast.
Oh yeah, it's a very good cast. Everyone, make sure you tune into that. Please tune into From Scratch. You are missing out if you do not experience this transcendent work of art. And Zoe, it's the best work, honestly, that I think you've ever done. And you've got decades more to go in your career. So thank you for your time today. Honestly, I really appreciate it.